Well, the chips war is heating up once again. This time, AMD and Nvidia both pushing higher after announcing new next-generation AI chips over the weekend. Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang touting a new chip called Rubin, which he expects to release in 2026. AMD announcing a next-generation AI chip for laptops, with its CEO Lisa Su saying that AI is the company's, quote, #1 priority. For more on what this means for the space and some of those investment opportunities, we want to bring in Beth Kindig, IO, a fund lead tech analyst. Beth, it's good to talk to you here. So first, when we see some of this excitement once again playing out in early market action here this morning, both AMD and Nvidia shares pushing to the upside. What do you make of the announcements that we got this weekend, and where it really tells us about the fact that we're still, it sounds like, very early within the cycle?
Yes, early in the cycle is a great way of putting it. Thanks for having me on. Basically, a couple weeks ago, we had written that in a Forbes analysis that the product roadmap is the first line of defense. It's really important to understand that by speeding up the product release cycle from 2 years to 1, that companies that were previously very cyclical, you had to be very careful about your timing, are now becoming more secular. So in this AI battle, this AI competition between AMD and Nvidia, what we're seeing is something that has never been done before at the data center level. They're basically going to be releasing these every year. As you said, there's Blackwell by the end of this year, Blackwell Ultra, Rubin, Rubin Ultra. And within that, there's additional variations. Within Blackwell, there's a B100, a B200, a GB200, NVL72. So within even that product release cycle of every year, there's additional variations that are coming out. What that means for investors to understand is that previously cyclical companies are becoming more secular. And then when you add on the software layer, that's really going to drive home secular gains.
AMD's CEO, Lisa Su, recently took the Computex stage in Taiwan to unveil her company's latest artificial intelligence processors, as well as a detailed plan to develop AI chips over the next 2 years in a bid to challenge industry leader Nvidia. For a very long time, AMD has been competing with Nvidia, proving that it's here to stay and challenge the AI giant, and the company's new AI chips certainly prove that. So, in today's video, we're going to walk you through Lisa Su's most important Computex announcements, and we'll also talk about why we think AMD stands a strong chance of reaching a $1 trillion market cap by 2030. But first, if you want to keep up with AMD's latest updates and keep up with the stock market's latest news, you can follow our Twitter account. We post multiple times daily about the biggest changes and catalysts in the market, so click the follow button if you don't want to miss the newest market updates. Now, back to today's video.
Nvidia is the clear leader. The Blackwell chip is the clear, it's setting another, the bar even higher. But AMD is kind of coming out and saying, we're the best alternative to the Hopper chip. And Microsoft has come out and said, we really can't get the Nvidia chip, so we're going to use AMD. Is being number 2 in this crazy market, is that good enough? Because here's the problem. With all this going on, AMD's having trouble growing their revenues.
Yes, I haven't heard AMD actually come out and say, we're by us, we're a good alternative. But I think at about 11% market share, even chipping away at any of NVIDIA's 80% market share would be looked at as a win for a company like AMD. In terms of the optimism on Wall Street that AMD can do that, of course, I look to the stock ratings to see what analysts think. And yes, 80% of analysts still have a buy rating on shares of AMD. But keep in mind, as I mentioned, now actually given today's gains, I set up 12% year to date. It's actually more like 10% year to date, only about 38% over the past 1 year. So you would think, how much more room is there to grow? There's only about 15% upside, according to the median price target on Wall Street of 190, a little bit more than that with today's declines. But I will say B of A did hike their price target to 195 from 185 for AMD, so getting a bit more optimistic. That's a bit higher than the median, but it seems like there's definitely optimism around AMD in terms of the future when you look at the 12-month ratings and price targets, but it certainly doesn't look like Nvidia, which has shares are up over the past 1 year, 190%, yet still 80% of analysts, more than 90% of analysts have a buy rating on shares of Nvidia. Median price target needs to be recalculated because that just got a $1,500 price target from B of A, which isn't included in there, but it was $1,200. So we just keep seeing those price targets increase and increase for Nvidia. So I do think that, yes, competition is certainly a headwind for Nvidia, but they're going to be the one to beat. AMD, I don't think will actually beat them, but they could chip away at that 80% market share.
During the lightning round segment of his show on CNBC, Jim Cramer said that AMD under $150 would be terrific, and that it's really good, but it doesn't have what Nvidia has. Cramer's comments show that AMD is still seen as playing catch-up to Nvidia, when the company has been making significant strides in the industry. At the Computex technology trade show in Taiwan, Lisa Su introduced the MI325X accelerator, which is set to be made available in the fourth quarter of 2024, just in time to compete with Nvidia's impressive Blackwell chips. AMD also introduced an upcoming series of chips titled MI350, which is expected to be available in 2025 and will be based on new chip architecture. Compared to the currently available MI300 series of AI chips, AMD said it expects the MI350 to perform 35 times better in inference, which is the process of computing generative AI responses. Additionally, AMD revealed the MI400 series, which will arrive in 2026 and will be based on an architecture called Next. Su also said that AMD is aiming at an AI chip product cycle of 1 year. Similarly, Nvidia said it plans to release a new family of AI chips every year. Back in April, she said that the company expects AI chip sales of roughly $4 billion for 2024, an increase of $500 million from its prior estimate. And investors should definitely expect higher chip sales as the company releases more advanced AI chips. The market for AI chips is expected to see accelerated growth. Indeed, this market is estimated to be worth $30 billion this year, and it is expected to exceed $100 billion in 2029 and top $200 billion in 2032, according to Precedence Research of Canada. And while Nvidia is expected to own the majority of the market, even 10% of the market will result in AMD adding $20 billion to its revenue from AI chip sales by 2032. So the fact that AMD's chips compete with Nvidia's when it comes to price can be considered a bullish case for AMD stock. In addition to the new AI chips, Lisa Su announced new products at Computex, which are set to completely destroy another competitor of the company and solidify AMD's position as a market leader. So, let's get right into it. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Investocracy. At the Computex event, AMD also said that its latest generation of CPUs will likely be available in the second half of this year. AMD is a market leader when it comes to CPUs because while businesses generally prioritize spending on AI chips in data centers, some of the company's CPUs are used in conjunction with GPUs, though the ratio is skewed in favor of GPUs. The global CPU market is expected to reach a valuation of $100 billion by the end of 2030, with a compound annual growth rate of 10.5% from 2023 to 2030. In addition to that, AMD recently secured 33% of the server CPU market, taking market share from Intel. So, the introduction of new CPUs will help AMD take more market share, and if it manages to increase that market share to, let's say, 50% by 2030, CPUs will add around $50 billion to the company's total revenues. AMD also detailed architecture for its new NPUs, which are dedicated to handling on-device AI tasks in AI PCs. There's an even greater opportunity for the company in the NPUs market, as this market is expected to reach $238 billion by 2030. Chipmakers have been banking on added AI capabilities to drive growth in the PC market as it emerges from a years-long slump, with PC companies like HP and Lenovo saying that they will release devices that will include AMD's AI PC chips, and AMD itself saying that its processors exceed Microsoft's Copilot Plus PC requirements. With all of this in mind, is AMD stock a great investment currently? And can the company reach a $1 trillion valuation by the year 2030? Let's find out. But first, if you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
Again, Beth, then, so how far behind on, let's say, on AI accelerators there, how far behind do you think competition is? Give it to us in, I don't know, quarters, if that's a useful yardstick.
In terms of how far behind competition is, the difference between something like Nvidia and something like AMD is that Nvidia is definitely the go-to for training. Now, once inference market is built out, right now 40% of Nvidia's revenue comes from inference. That is where there's an opportunity for AMD to compete. AMD is very good at design, and what they did is they doubled the memory. And so now it's a competition against memory, because you can run the large language models in memory close to the user, close to where the edge basically is what you call it. So now there's a little bit of an opportunity here for AMD to compete with Nvidia, specifically on inference at the edge, due to the large memory components that AMD is building in their designs. That's the key to why AMD has a little bit of room to take some of the market. If I were to guess, I would say AMD, by the time this is said and done, let's just say 2030, will have no more than 10 to 25% of the GPU market.
That was Beth Kinding, the lead tech analyst at the IO Fund, talking about how AMD can really compete with Nvidia. Kinding is bullish on the two companies and expects that Nvidia will reach a $10 trillion market cap by 2030. She also thinks that AMD will have around 10% to 25% of the GPU market by that same year, and both cases are really bullish for the company, as the GPU market is expected to reach $395.5 billion by 2030, so 10% of that would be $39.5 billion, and 25% would be $98.8 billion. She also thinks that AMD is completely underestimated when it comes to designing chips, while Intel isn't at all that strong. AMD's current market cap is around $270 billion, so it has to double less than twice to reach a $1 trillion market cap. But is the company's path to $1 trillion at all secured? Well, in order to reach $1 trillion by 2030, AMD's market cap has to rise by an average of 24% over the next 6 years. At first glance, achieving that benchmark is not far-fetched. AMD's data center revenue rose 80% in the first quarter of 2024 to $2.4 billion. And even though that didn't match Nvidia's 262% overall revenue boost in the most recent quarter, it still shows that AMD derives some benefit from the massive demand for AI chips. Unfortunately for AMD, revenue shrunk by 4% yearly in 2023. Also, in Q1 of 2024, it rose by only 2% to $5.5 billion because massive declines in revenues from the company's gaming and embedded segments offset most of the growth in client and data center revenue. In addition to that, AMD saw 2 years of yearly net income declines. Also, even in Q1, net income of $123 million rose from a $139 million loss in the year-ago quarter. That indicates that while a negative cycle may be turning around, it is unclear how much that will help the stock. That relatively low profit level points to an elevated PE ratio of 253, and this means that the forward PE ratio of 49, probably better, reflects its valuation. Nonetheless, the average forward multiple over the last 5 years is 35, indicating significant overvaluation. Also, its growth is not in a position to match Nvidia's performance. The data center segment accounted for 43% of AMD's revenue. So even if AMD grows enough to match the percentage of revenue from AI chips, the bump will not be as dramatic as it was for Nvidia. But the good news is 2 of the 4 segments, gaming and embedded, might likely benefit from an upcycle, as the current declines likely happened because of an inevitable pullback that came with the industry's cyclicality. And when you think about the growth expected for all types of semiconductors and the massive demand for AI chips, you'd see that AMD stands a strong chance of reaching $1 trillion by 2030. But investors should keep in mind that this is a really volatile industry, and it's too early to tell where the various chip sectors will find themselves in 2030. But with a 6-year time horizon, AMD should be a primary beneficiary of the high demand for chips. In other words, even if AMD's market cap doesn't reach $1 trillion in 2030, it will more than likely significantly exceed today's $270 billion market cap. But what do you think about AMD stock? And what are your expectations for the company's future? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to tell us what your valuation for AMD is. If you would like to know more about the latest updates about companies like AMD, then go ahead and click on the next video on your screen.